Welcome to Heart Over Gold, the channel where love, kindness, and humanity shine brighter than any fortune. In today's story, Michael Daniels, a successful CEO, was lost in a life of wealth and power but void of true connection. One rainy evening, he crossed paths with Eva, a humble cleaner, and her daughter, Lily, both struggling with their own hardships. Moved by compassion, Michael offered help, and what started as an act of kindness blossomed into a deep, life-changing bond. As their relationship grew, Michael's past including betrayal from his ex-fiancée, Claire, threatened their future. Together, Michael and Eva navigated these challenges, discovering that love, trust, and resilience were the true measures of wealth. Their journey became one of healing, proving that family and connection were more valuable than any success or fortune. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments, and keep up with our latest stories. It was a cold, rainy evening when the events unfolded, a night that would change the lives of three strangers forever. Michael Daniels, the CEO of one of the largest tech firms in the country, had everything anyone could dream of: wealth, fame, power, and a life of luxury. But despite his success, there was an emptiness inside him. He had spent the last decade buried in board meetings, endless calls, and the ceaseless pressure to maintain his empire. His relationships were nothing more than transactional, and his happiness, it seemed like a distant memory. On that particular evening, Michael had just wrapped up an exhausting day of work. His mind buzzed with thoughts of new projects, mergers, and deals. He decided to leave his downtown office early, a rare occurrence. The drive back to his penthouse was routine, and yet, for some reason, the rain and the monotony of his surroundings left him feeling more isolated than ever. He had everything and, yet nothing. As he pulled into the underground garage of his building, something caught his agile figure standing by the entrance of the building, shielding herself from the rain with an old, tattered umbrella. It was a woman, a cleaner perhaps, dressed in a simple uniform, her face partially obscured by the wet strands of her hair. He would later learn her name was Eva. She was standing alone, seemingly lost in thought, a little girl clutching her hand. The girl, no older than 8, had a look of sadness in her eyes, her gaze empty as she stood there, staring at the ground. Michael couldn't help but feel a pang of curiosity mixed with something else, something unfamiliar. He was used to the sterile interactions with high-profile business people, but this was different. The rawness of the moment struck him. Without thinking, Michael got out of his car and approached the woman. "Is everything all right?" he asked, his voice warm but slightly hesitant. Eva looked up, surprised, but quickly masked her discomfort with a polite smile. "Yes, sir, it's just the rain. My shift ended late today, and I was waiting for a ride. It's been a long day for us both," she replied, her voice soft but filled with the weariness of a life lived in the shadows of others' grandeur. Michael's eyes shifted to the little girl beside her, her wide brown eyes meeting his for a moment. The child gave a faint smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Do you need help?" Michael asked, his instincts kicking in. His heart seemed to swell with something he hadn't felt in years. Compassion. Eva shook her head, grateful, but too proud to accept charity. "No, sir, we'll manage." She glanced down at her daughter and tightened her grip on the girl's small hand. But something in her demeanor shifted. Maybe it was the exhaustion, or maybe it was the sheer force of Michael's presence. But she added quietly, "Thank you for asking, though. That's more than most people would do." Michael found himself caught in the moment, a feeling of helplessness creeping into his chest. Here he was, a man who could move mountains in the corporate world. But when it came to human connection, true unguarded connection, he was a stranger. "Let me at least get you to a taxi," he insisted, reaching for his phone. Eva hesitated, but then nodded, perhaps sensing the sincerity in his words. As the rain fell harder, they waited in silence, Michael standing a few feet away, glancing at the woman and her daughter, who were both so clearly out of place in the glossy world he inhabited. When the taxi arrived, Michael opened the door for them. "Where to?" he asked, his voice gentle. "Just a little further from here, sir," Eva answered, her voice strained. And as she climbed into the back seat with her daughter, Michael could feel something he had never experienced before, an aching connection to this woman and her little girl. As they drove off into the night, Michael's mind kept wandering back to Eva and her daughter. There was a story there, a pain, a depth of experience that he couldn't ignore. And yet, Michael's world was one of luxury, a place where such lives were just a blur in the rearview mirror. Unnoticed and forgotten, the next day, something pulled at him. He couldn't get them out of his mind, and so, against his better judgment, he decided to look into Ava's background. The result was not what he expected. Eva was a single mother, scraping by with low-paying jobs to give her daughter, Lily, a better life. She had been abandoned by her ex-husband, who had left her when she needed him most, leaving behind debts that forced her to work multiple jobs just to survive. She lived in a small, cramped apartment on the outskirts of the city. Despite the hardships, Eva was resilient, determined to make life better for Lily, even though she had lost her own dreams along the way. But as Michael dug deeper, he learned something else, something that broke him. Ava's ex-husband had been a man of status in the same circles Michael frequented, a man who had used his connections to destroy Ava's life after their divorce. His betrayal had left her financially devastated, and she had never recovered. Yet Eva never spoke of it. She kept her suffering hidden behind a mask of strength, putting on a brave face every day for the sake of her daughter. Michael realized that this woman, this simple, unassuming cleaner, had been through more than he could ever imagine. Days passed, and Michael couldn't shake the urge to see her again. He needed to understand her, to reach out, to offer help, out of pity, but because something in him recognized the same emptiness he had been running from for years. He realized, for the first time in his life, that he needed to connect with someone, truly connect, and so he did the unthinkable. He reached out to her, asking if she would join him for coffee. At first, she resisted, uncertain of his motives. But Michael reassured her that this was not about charity. It was about understanding. Eventually, she agreed. When they met again, something changed. The conversation flowed easily, despite their vastly different lives. Michael listened to Ava's story, the pain, the betrayal, the love she had for her daughter. He learned about the sacrifices she had made and the dreams she had let go of in order to survive. In that moment, Michael realized that true wealth wasn't measured by stock portfolios or luxury cars. It was measured in the connections we make, the love we give, and the strength to overcome life's challenges. As the months passed, Michael and Ava's bond grew stronger. He found himself not just helping her, but learning from her. Eva taught him what it meant to love selflessly, to sacrifice without question, and to live with integrity. And then, one evening, Michael did something that took even him by surprise. He proposed a question that had never crossed his mind before. "Want you and Lily in my life. I want to help you, not just with money, but with love. Will you marry me, Eva?" Eva looked at him, her eyes filled with tears, unsure if she could trust again, but knowing in her heart that she had found something more precious than any wealth, someone who truly cared. "I love you," she whispered, "but I need time to trust." You and Michael, for the first time, was willing to wait. Years passed, and the story of Michael and Eva became one of those legends whispered about in the corridors of power. The story of a billionaire CEO who, at the height of his success, met a humble cleaner and her daughter and learned what it meant to truly live. Betrayal had scarred them both, but in the end, love healed them. As time went on, Michael's connection with Eva deepened. What had started as a simple act of kindness had blossomed into something far more significant. He began to see the world through Eva's eyes, understanding the struggles of those who lived in the shadows of wealth, never afforded the same privileges he had grown up with. The contrast between his opulent, isolated life and the resilience Eva exhibited daily struck him in ways he couldn't quite put into words. Eva, for her part, struggled with her feelings for Michael. She had never imagined someone like him, influential and surrounded by a world of glamour, could be interested in her. She was used to being overlooked, to living in the margins of society, always at the mercy of others. Her ex-husband's betrayal had left a scar on her heart, one she was terrified to reopen. She was afraid of trusting again, of letting someone in only to have them disappoint her. But there was something about Michael that made her feel seen for the first time in years. Lily, too, was becoming an integral part of Michael's life. The little girl, once so distant and withdrawn, had begun to open up to him in her quiet way. Michael had no children of his own, but he found himself caring for Lily as if she were his own. He would take her to the park, buy her books, and even help her with schoolwork. The connection they formed was unspoken, yet undeniable. And for the first time in his life, Michael realized he didn't need an heir or a legacy to validate his existence. Lily was his family in every sense of the word, but Ava's hesitation remained. She could see the growing affection between them, but her fear of being hurt again was a powerful barrier. She couldn't let go of the past years of emotional neglect from her ex-husband, the financial ruin he had caused her, the pain of doing it all alone. She had built walls around her heart, walls that no one had ever been able to breach. Michael, despite his wealth and charm, seemed to be facing an uphill battle in earning her trust. One night, as they sat in a cozy cafe, Eva decided to confide in him. Her voice trembled as she spoke, her words carrying the weight of years of unspoken hurt. "You don't know what it's like, Michael," she said, her eyes brimming with unshed tears. "To have someone you love tear your life apart. To trust someone only for them to walk away when you need them the most. My ex-husband promised me the world. He promised he'd take care of me. But when the going got tough, he vanished. Left me with nothing but debts I couldn't pay, and I was too proud to ask for help." Michael reached across the table, his hand gently covering hers. There was no judgment in his touch, only understanding. "I don't want to hurt you, Eva," he said softly. "I want to be there for you. For you and Lily. I've never asked anyone for anything in my life, but I'm asking you for this. Give me a chance to show you that I'm not like him." Eva looked at him, her heart torn between the love she was beginning to feel and the fear that had held her captive for so long. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to trust him. But could she? "I'm scared, Michael," she whispered. "I don't know if I can love again. Not after everything I've been through." Michael leaned in closer, his voice full of conviction. "You don't have to love me right away. You don't even have to trust me fully. But what I'm asking is for you to let me in. Slowly, one step at a time. I'll wait, Eva. I'll wait for as long as it takes. The sincerity in his voice, the tenderness of his words broke through the walls Eva had built around herself. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to hope, to dream. Perhaps, just perhaps, she could have a second chance at love. And maybe, just maybe, this time it would be different. As the days turned into weeks, Michael continued to prove his dedication to Eva and Lily. He was patient, understanding, and never rushed her. He showed up for her in ways no one ever had, offering not just material support, but emotional support, too. He would bring her flowers, not because it was a grand gesture, but because he knew she liked them. He would surprise her with tickets to a play she had mentioned wanting to see. He would stay up late talking to her, listening to her frustrations, her hopes, and her dreams. Eva began to relax, to believe in the possibility of a future with Michael. She started to trust him, not because he was rich or powerful, but because he cared. He cared about her well-being, her happiness, and the happiness of her daughter. He wasn't trying to change her or fix her. He was simply offering his presence, his love, and his unwavering support. But just when everything seemed perfect, a shadow from Michael's past threatened to destroy the life they were building. Together, one day, Michael's ex-fiancée, Claire, showed up at his office. She was beautiful, poised, and every bit the woman he had once thought he would marry. They had ended their engagement years ago, but Claire never quite let go. She had always believed that Michael would eventually come back to her, and now, seeing his growing attachment to Eva, she couldn't stand it. She wanted Michael back, and she would stop at nothing to get him. Claire made her presence known in the most disruptive way. She showed up at the office, making claims about how she and Michael were meant to be together. She insinuated that Eva was nothing more than a temporary distraction for Michael, a fleeting fling. Her words were calculated, aimed at sowing doubt in Michael's heart and creating a wedge between him and Eva. Michael, furious at Claire's manipulation, did everything in his power to shut her down. He made it clear that his life had moved on, that he was no longer the man he was when they were together, but the damage was done. Eva, already vulnerable from her past, overheard part of their conversation. She misinterpreted the situation, thinking that Michael was still tied to his past, that Claire still had a hold on him. That night, Eva confronted Michael, her voice trembling with uncertainty. "I heard what Claire said today," she said, her eyes filled with hurt. "Is she? Right. Do you still love her?" Michael was taken aback by the question. He could see the fear in Eva's eyes. The walls she had so carefully begun to tear down, now rising up again. "Eva," he said, his voice firm but gentle. "No, I don't love her. Not anymore. What she said, it doesn't matter. You matter. Lily matters. That's what matters to me." But Eva couldn't shake the doubt that had been planted in her heart. She backed away from him, her words stumbling over one another. "I need time, Michael. I don't know if I can keep doing this. I can't keep opening myself up to this pain." Michael's heart sank. He understood her fears, but it broke him to see her pull away. He had fought so hard to show her that he was different, that his love for her was real, but now it felt like he was losing her all over again. "I'll give you time," he said quietly, "but I won't give up on us. Not now, not ever." For the first time, Michael understood the depth of Eva's pain. He realized that love wasn't just about grand gestures or the promises we make. It was about consistency, trust, and patience. And above all, it was about being there. Even when it felt like everything was falling apart, days turned into weeks, and slowly, Eva began to come to terms with her fears. She talked to her daughter, opened up about her doubts and hopes. She realized that love, real love, didn't mean perfection. It meant accepting each other's flaws, supporting each other's dreams, and standing together when the world seemed determined to tear them apart. One evening, as Michael was leaving the office, he found Eva waiting for him by the door. She was standing there, her eyes filled with tears, but there was a soft smile on her face. "I'm ready," she said simply, her voice full of emotion. "I trust you, Michael, and I love you. I just needed to be sure." And in that moment, Michael knew that everything he had fought for, the love, the trust, the connection, was worth it. Because love, the kind they had, was worth waiting for. As the weeks turned into months, Michael and Ava's bond only deepened. The trust that had once seemed so fragile was now growing stronger with each passing day. Michael continued to support Eva in every way he could, but it wasn't just about providing for her anymore. It was about sharing in her life, the mundane moments and the extraordinary ones alike. They would spend evenings walking through the park, their hands brushing occasionally, each touch a promise that they were in this together. Michael learned to slow down and appreciate the small moments, something he had never done in the chaos of his corporate life. Eva, for her part, was beginning to let go of her fears. She still had moments of doubt. Old habits were hard to break, but she was no longer afraid to embrace love. The pain of her past, the betrayal by her ex-husband, no longer had the same grip on her heart. She had come to realize that it wasn't about forgetting the past, but about understanding it and moving forward. She learned to trust Michael, not because he was perfect, but because he was there, steady and unwavering. Even when things weren't easy, Lily too was flourishing. The shy, withdrawn child who had once barely spoken a word to anyone was now laughing more, playing freely, and even calling Michael Uncle Mike without hesitation. Eva watched with a mixture of awe and gratitude as her daughter blossomed. Under Michael's affection, the love he showed Lily was unconditional, and it warmed Ava's heart in ways she hadn't expected. The little girl began to look at Michael as more than just a friend of her mother's. He was a part of their family, and in a strange, beautiful way, he had become the father figure that Lily had never had. But as their relationship deepened, the shadows of Michael's past continued to linger. Eva knew that his life was far from perfect, and there were still pieces of it he hadn't shared with her. One night, as they sat together in his penthouse, Eva asked him about his past, the one he never seemed to talk about, the one that felt like a ghost in the room whenever they were together. "Michael," she began, her voice tentative, "I know. We've been through a lot, and I know you've been there for me in ways I can't even put into words. But I need to know something. I need to understand what it is about your past that makes you so ... distant sometimes. I can see it in the way you close off sometimes, the way you avoid certain topics." Michael looked at her, his eyes darkening slightly as he leaned back in his chair. He knew this moment was coming. He had kept the truth about his past hidden from her because he didn't want to burden her. He didn't want her to see him the way he saw himself, flawed, broken, and deeply scarred by the people he had once loved. "I wasn't always the man you see in front of you, Eva," he said quietly, his voice tinged with regret. "There was a time when I had everything, the money, the career, the status, but I lost myself in it. I thought I had to be the perfect son, the perfect businessman, the perfect man. And in trying to be all those things, I lost the most important thing myself. I made mistakes, I hurt people, and I lost someone I loved deeply because of it. Eva listened intently, her heart aching for the man sitting in front of her. She had always known there was more to him than the polished CEO persona he projected. But hearing him admit his own shortcomings, his own vulnerability, was something she hadn't expected. "It was Claire," he continued, his voice softening as he spoke her name. "She was the woman I thought I'd marry. We were together for years, and I believed we were building a future together, but I was blind to her manipulations. She was controlling, possessive. I thought I could save her, but in doing so, I lost myself. I lost my connection to the person I truly was. In the end, she left me just as my father had always left my mother. And that's when I realized that my past, the way I was raised, was shaping who I had become. It was a wake-up call, Eva. I had to change, or I would end up just like him." In my own arrogance and self-doubt, Ava's heart broke as she listened to Michael's confession. She had known that love wasn't always easy, that it came with its scars and its pain. But she hadn't realized just how much Michael had suffered. She reached out to him, her hand gently touching his. "You don't have to be perfect, Michael," she whispered, her voice full of compassion. "I love you because of who you are now, not because of who you were. We all have our scars, our pasts. What matters is how we choose to move forward. And I believe in us. I believe in what we're building." Michael looked at her, his eyes filled with a mix of gratitude and emotion. He had never felt so seen, so understood in his life. Eva didn't want to fix him, didn't want to change him. She accepted him for all that he was, the good, the bad, and everything in between. It was a love that didn't demand perfection, but celebrated the beauty of imperfection. The next few months were a whirlwind. Michael and Ava's relationship continued to grow stronger, and Michael found himself falling deeper in love with her every day. He had never been a man to show his emotions easily, but Eva had unlocked a part of him he had kept hidden for so long. He realized that in loving her, he had found a piece of himself he didn't know he had lost. But life, as always, had other plans. One day, Michael received a call from his lawyer. Claire was back. She had filed a lawsuit against him, claiming that their previous breakup had been unfair and that she was entitled to a large portion of his assets. It was a classic power move on her part, and Michael knew it, but it shook him, not because he was afraid of losing his wealth. He had long since learned that money wasn't everything, but because Claire had come back to destroy the one thing that mattered to him now. His life with Eva. Eva could see the toll the news was taking on Michael. She could see the familiar fear and anger in his eyes, the same emotions he had carried with him for so long. She knew this was a battle he couldn't face alone. "We'll get through this," she said firmly, her voice unwavering. "We're a team, Michael. Whatever happens, we'll face it together." Michael was taken aback by her words. He had always been the one to carry the weight of the world on his shoulders, but Ava's words reminded him that he didn't have to bear it alone. He had her, and that made all the difference. Over the next few weeks, Michael fought the lawsuit with everything he had. It was a messy, drawn-out process, but with Eva by his side, he found the strength to keep going. She helped him navigate the emotional turmoil, offering unwavering support and reminding him of the love they shared. In the end, Michael emerged victorious. Claire's claims were dismissed, and she was forced to pay legal fees for the frivolous lawsuits she had filed. But it wasn't just the victory in court that Michael celebrated. It was the victory in his heart, the realization that, with Eva, he could overcome anything. She had shown him that love wasn't about avoiding pain or conflict. It was about standing together through it all. Months later, Michael stood at the altar, watching Eva walk toward him, her eyes filled with tears, but this time they were tears of joy. The woman who had once been so afraid to love again was now the woman he was about to marry. They had both come so far, not just as individuals, but as a couple, and Michael knew that whatever life threw their way, they would face it together. As they exchanged vows, surrounded by friends and family, Michael knew that this was the life he had always been meant to live, not one of wealth and status, but one filled with love, trust, and the unwavering support of the woman who had taught him what it truly meant to live. And in that moment, he realized that the greatest gift he had ever received wasn't the success of his career, it was the love of Eva and Lily, the family he never knew he needed. Their story was one of redemption, of overcoming betrayal and fear, and finding love in the most unexpected places. It was a story that would stay with them for the rest of their lives. A reminder that no matter how broken we are, there is always a chance for healing and for love. As the years passed, Michael, Eva, and Lily settled into a rhythm that felt both comforting and exhilarating. Their life together was far from perfect. There were still challenges, still moments when life seemed to throw curveballs their way, but they faced it all with an unshakable sense of unity. Michael's company continued to thrive, but now it was no longer his only focus. The business, while still a priority, had taken a back seat to the family he had built. Eva had found work she enjoyed as a community organizer, helping low-income families access essential resources. She was passionate about making a difference, and Michael fully supported her efforts. Lily had blossomed into a confident, curious young girl who excelled in school and showed a natural talent for art. Michael often found himself amazed by the way she viewed the world, the way she could find beauty in the simplest things, like a flower growing through a crack in the pavement, or the way the sun cast a warm glow on the city streets in the evening. Eva and Michael had taught her that beauty was everywhere, and Lily's artwork became a beautiful reflection of that truth. But as their family flourished, the echoes of Michael's past occasionally resurfaced. Claire, though she had been defeated in court, never truly left him alone. She would send him occasional emails or make cryptic phone calls, reminding him of their shared history and trying to rekindle some form of connection. Michael never responded. He had made it clear to her, more than once, that his life had moved on, but Claire had a way of haunting him, of reminding him of the man he had once been, the man who was vulnerable to manipulation. One day, Michael received a letter in the mail. It was handwritten, elegant, the kind of stationery that screamed of old money. He almost didn't want to open it, but something inside him told him to. With a sense of dread, he sliced open the envelope. The letter inside was from his father. It had been years since Michael had spoken to him. His father, a man of cold ambition and dispassionate wisdom, had always been a distant figure in Michael's life. He had never been the father who played catch or attended school plays. Instead, he was the kind of man who imparted lessons through silence, through harsh words masked as advice. The letter read, "Michael, I hope this finds you well. I've been following your progress. You've done well for yourself, haven't you? I've heard about your relationship with that woman and her daughter. It's surprising to me, truly, that someone of your status would involve himself with people like that. I wonder, what does she bring to the table? What does she have to offer someone like you? I've always expected more from you. You've always had potential, but now I'm not sure. I thought we raised you better than that." The letter ended with a curt closing. "Your father." Michael stared at the letter for what felt like an eternity. His hands shook and his mind raced. For a moment, he was the young boy again, seeking his father's approval, wanting to please a man who had always seen him as a tool for success. But now, he knew better. He knew the price of that approval, the emptiness it left behind. Eva had helped him find a strength he never knew he had, a strength that didn't depend on the approval of anyone but himself. With a deep breath, Michael crumpled the letter and tossed it into the trash. He couldn't let his father's words have power over him anymore. He had created his own family, one that was built on love and trust, not status or wealth. Later that evening, Michael sat down with Eva. The weight of the letter still lingered in the air, but he didn't want to keep it to himself any longer. He told her everything: his father's letter, the hurt it caused, and the lingering doubts it brought to the surface. Eva listened quietly, never interrupting, simply offering her presence and support. "You're not that man anymore, Michael," she said softly, her hand resting on his. "You've changed. You've created something real, something that matters, and I love you for it." Her words, simple yet powerful, brought him comfort. He realized then that he didn't need his father's approval, or anyone else's. He had found something far more precious: the love and acceptance of Eva and Lily, his true family. In the months that followed, Michael worked even harder to build a life for them that was filled with meaning. His company had reached a new level of success, but he no longer obsessed over it the way he once had. Instead, he used his resources to give back, investing in charitable organizations that supported education, healthcare, and underprivileged communities. Eva had inspired him to look beyond his own success and to think about how he could make a positive impact on the world. Together, they hosted charity events, organized fundraisers, and worked on initiatives that helped people in need. It wasn't about the spotlight, it was about making a difference, no matter how small. Their actions spoke louder than words ever could, and they both found fulfillment in knowing they were contributing to something bigger than themselves. But as life often proves, nothing is ever truly smooth sailing. A new challenge arose when Eva was offered a high-profile position with a national non-profit organization. It was a dream job, one she had worked tirelessly for, but it would require her to move to another city. For the first time in years, Michael found himself faced with the idea of being apart from her. The thought of it made his chest tighten. He had just begun to feel settled, to feel like they were finally on the right path, and now this opportunity, though incredible, threatened to pull them in different directions. The decision wasn't easy. Eva was torn between her ambitions and her love for Michael and Lily. She had always put her family first, but this was a once-in-a-lifetime chance to make a real impact on a national scale. Michael, too, was conflicted. He wanted to support her, to be proud of her accomplishments, but the thought of spending so much time apart was unbearable. After many sleepless nights and heartfelt conversations, they came to a decision. They would move, as a family, to the new city. Michael would expand his business operations there, and they would create a new life together. It wasn't the easy choice, but it was the right one. Together, they could overcome any obstacle, and they knew that no matter where they went, they would always have each other as they prepared for the move. Michael stood in the doorway of their old home, looking out over the city that had been the backdrop of their journey. It had been a place of so much pain, but also so much healing. They were leaving it behind, but the memories would stay with them forever. Turning to Eva, who stood beside him, he took her hand in his, feeling the weight of their shared past and the promise of their future. "We're not just building a life together, Eva," he said softly. "We're building a legacy, one of love, trust, and redemption." Eva smiled, her eyes filled with tears of happiness. "And that legacy will live on in Lily and in every life we touch." Together, they walked out of the door, hand in hand, ready for whatever the future held. They had come so far from brokenness to healing, from fear to love, and with each step they took, they knew that they would continue to build a life that was theirs, not defined by the mistakes of the past, but by the love and strength they had found in each other. Their journey was far from over, but for the first time in their lives, they were ready for whatever came next. As Michael and Eva settled into their new city, the challenges of adapting to a new life took on an unexpected form. The transition wasn't as smooth as they had hoped. Michael had to establish a new network for his business, and while his reputation as a successful CEO opened many doors, the competition was fierce, and the market was saturated with fresh ideas. He found himself working long hours again, grappling with the pressure of maintaining his company's success while juggling his responsibilities at home. It was hard not to fall back into old habits, the late nights, the relentless drive to succeed, but he knew, deep down, that this wasn't what he wanted anymore. He didn't want to lose sight of the life he was building with Eva and Lily. Eva, too, faced her own struggles. Her new job was demanding and rewarding, but it was also overwhelming. The responsibilities of managing a national non-profit organization left her little time to spend with her family, and she began to feel the weight of the constant balancing act. As she poured herself into her work, she found herself missing the quieter moments of their old life, the evenings spent talking over dinner, the weekends in the park with Lily. Despite their best efforts, the distance between them began to widen. It wasn't that they had stopped loving each other, but the pressures of their new life were taking their toll. Eva felt the strain of trying to be everything to everyone, an ambitious professional, a loving mother, and a supportive partner. Michael, in turn, struggled to reconcile his desire to support Eva with his own need for balance and peace. The strain began to show in small ways: a short conversation here, a missed family dinner there, and before they knew it, they were both lost in the whirlwind of their separate worlds. One evening, as Michael came home later than usual, he found Eva sitting in the living room, looking out the window. The soft light of the setting sun bathed her in a warm glow, but there was a sadness in her eyes that he couldn't ignore. She looked exhausted, her face drawn, her shoulders hunched in a way that made him ache. "Eva," he asked softly, his voice tinged with concern, "are you okay?" She turned to him, and for a moment, their eyes locked in silence. He could see the tension in her face, the strain of trying to carry the weight of everything on her shoulders. "I'm not sure anymore," she replied quietly, her voice breaking. "I feel like I'm losing myself, Michael. I'm stretched too thin. I'm trying so hard to be the person everyone needs me to be, but I don't know how much longer I can do this." Michael's heart clenched. He crossed the room and knelt beside her, taking her hands in his. "You don't have to do this alone, Eva. We're supposed to be in this together. I can't be the partner you need if I'm constantly lost in my own world. I need to do better. We need to do better." She shook her head, tears welling up in her eyes. It's not just you. It's everything. The job, the pressure, the expectations. I love what I do, Michael, but I feel like I'm losing myself in it, and I don't want to lose you, too. Michael gently cupped her face in his hands, wiping away a tear that slipped down her cheek. You won't lose me, I promise. We've been through too much together to let anything tear us apart now. But Eva wasn't sure. She had always been the strong one, the one who kept everything together. But now, for the first time, she felt like she was falling apart, and she didn't know how to stop it. I'm scared, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. Scared that I'm going to wake up one day and realize that I've sacrificed everything, my dreams, my peace, my family, for the sake of a job, for the sake of trying to be someone I'm not. Michael looked at her, his heart breaking, for the woman who had been his rock, the woman who had held him together when he had been falling apart. You don't have to sacrifice anything. You deserve to have it, all your dreams, your peace, your family, and I'll be right here, with you, every step of the way. They sat in silence for a long while, their hands still entwined, the weight of their unspoken words hanging in the air. Eventually, Michael spoke again, his voice steady and resolute. We need to find balance, Eva, for both of us. We've come this far, together. I'm not willing to let go of what we've built. Let's take a step back, slow down, and remember what really matters. We'll figure it out, together. Eva nodded, the tears that had been threatening to fall now streaming down her cheeks. I want that too, Michael. I want us. I want our family. I just need to remember that it's okay to take a step back, that it's okay to not have everything figured out all the time. They held each other for a long time that night, their hearts intertwined, the weight of their fears and uncertainties slowly lifting. It wasn't going to be easy. They knew that, but they had faced worse. They had survived the darkness of their pasts, the betrayals, the heartbreaks, and they would face whatever came next with the same strength, the same love. Over the next few months, Michael and Eva worked hard to rebuild their connection. They restructured their lives, making time for each other in ways they hadn't before. Michael cut back on his work hours, delegating more tasks to his trusted employees, and Eva made adjustments to her schedule, allowing herself time to relax, to recharge. They began to prioritize their relationship again, setting aside time for dates, for family outings, for quiet moments together. They rediscovered the joy of simply being in each other's presence, without the distractions of work or the pressure of their own expectations. Lily, too, noticed the change. She saw her parents laughing more, talking more, and spending more time together. She felt the warmth of their love, the safety of their presence, and she thrived in that environment. The family became closer than ever, and as they navigated their new rhythm, they found strength in each other's support. But as their lives seemed to settle into a more peaceful routine, another challenge loomed on the horizon, one that neither of them could have anticipated. One evening, while Michael was reviewing some business documents, he received a call from an old colleague. The man's voice was urgent, filled with concern. Michael, you need to know something. There's been a leak. Someone is trying to undermine your company. They've gotten access to sensitive information, and they're planning to sabotage your next big deal. Michael felt his stomach drop. This was the kind of thing he had feared for years, being vulnerable, being exposed. He had worked tirelessly to build his reputation, his company, and now someone was trying to take it all away. He hung up the phone and immediately called Eva. When she answered, He could hear the concern in her voice. "Michael, what's wrong?" "I need to talk to you," he said, his voice heavy with worry. "It's about the company. There's a leak, Eva. Someone is trying to destroy everything I've worked for." Eva felt a chill run down her spine. She had seen Michael face many challenges in the past, but this was different. This wasn't just a business problem. It was a threat to everything they had built, everything they had fought for. "Where are you?" she asked, her voice steady. "I'm at the office." "I need to take care of this," Michael replied. Eva, without hesitation, stood up from the couch where she had been reading and grabbed her coat. "I'm coming to you. We're in this together, Michael. Always." The moment they reunited, they knew this battle wouldn't be easy. But it was a battle they would face together, just as they always had. The world might have been trying to pull them apart, but Michael and Eva had learnt the hard way that love, trust, and resilience were far stronger than any challenge life could throw at them. And so they faced the storm, side by side, knowing that whatever came next, they would emerge stronger for it. Because, in the end, it wasn't about the wealth, the business, or the status. It was about each other. And no matter what, they were not going to lose that. As Michael and Eva took on the crisis that loomed over their business, they found themselves digging deep, relying on the trust they had built over the years. The leak that had been discovered was only the tip of the iceberg. Michael's instincts told him this wasn't just a business rival trying to gain an edge. There was something personal behind it, a deliberate attack on everything he held dear. But who could it be? Who would go to such lengths to destroy him, to take down his company and the family he had worked so hard to build? Eva stood by his side, helping him through the investigations, coordinating with his legal team, and even pulling in some old contacts of her own from the non-profit world who were well-versed in security and handling sensitive situations. Together, they navigated through a tangled web of deceit and manipulation that Michael had never seen coming. There were betrayals within his own company, long-standing colleagues who had betrayed his trust for a quick financial gain. The shocking truth came to light when Michael discovered that it wasn't just one person involved. There was a conspiracy that spanned across multiple departments. The deeper they dug, the more Eva saw the emotional toll it was taking on Michael. The man she loved was slipping back into the mindset of his old self, the driven, calculating, single-minded CEO who believed that success was the only thing that mattered. Eva saw the spark of fear in his eyes as he realized that the empire he had built was being torn apart by people he had once considered friends. It reminded her of how he had been during the early days of their relationship, closed off, guarded, unsure of who he could trust. Eva refused to let him go down that road again. She understood the pressure he was under, but she also knew that the man who had learned to love again, to trust again, couldn't afford to lose himself in the darkness. She made it her mission to keep him grounded, to remind him that no matter how dire the situation seemed, they were in this together. It was a battle they could face as a team, as long as they didn't let fear take the reins. One evening, as they sat in their living room after another grueling day of strategy sessions and legal consultations, Michael broke down. It was the first time since they'd been together that he had allowed himself to show this vulnerability. He had always been the strong one, the one who took on the world without showing weakness. But now, with everything on the line, the cracks were starting to show. His shoulders slumped, and his voice, usually so steady and commanding, wavered. "I don't know how to fix this, Eva," he admitted, his eyes full of despair. "I thought I had built something that mattered, something that would last. Now, I'm losing everything. The people I trusted, the company I've worked my whole life to build, ... It's all falling apart. Eva moved closer to him, her heart aching at the sight of the man she loved so completely, now so shattered by the weight of the situation. She knew this wasn't just about the company. It was about his sense of identity, the idea that his worth was tied to his success. But she also knew that the person sitting in front of her was more than just his title, more than just his achievements. "You haven't lost anything, Michael," she said softly, her voice filled with conviction. "You're not your company. You're not your success or your failures. You are the man who has stood by me and Lily, who has taught me what it means to truly love and care for someone. You are the man who fought for us, even when it seemed like everything was against us." She placed her hand on his chest, where his heart was beating loudly. This is what matters. Not the business, not the people who have betrayed you. We will get through this, together. But you have to believe that we're strong enough to face anything. Michael looked at her, his eyes clouded with self-doubt, but something in her words broke through. He had been so focused on what he might lose that he had forgotten what he already had. Lily, the life they had built together. He had forgotten that in the end, it was their love that made him feel whole, not the wealth or the empire. He nodded slowly, his throat tight, and for the first time in weeks, he felt a glimmer of hope. "You're right," he whispered, his voice hoarse. "I've been so afraid of losing everything that I forgot what's really important. I can't do this alone, Eva. I need you." Eva smiled, brushing a tear from his cheek. "You don't have to do anything alone, Michael. We're a team. We always will be." The next day, they made a decision to confront the betrayal head-on. Michael called a meeting with the board members and key executives who had been involved in the conspiracy. He didn't want to play games or hide behind closed doors anymore. He wanted to expose the truth, and he wanted to do it with Eva by his side. The meeting was tense, full of accusations and denials. But Michael wasn't afraid anymore. He knew he had the truth on his side, and with Eva standing beside him, supporting him every step of the way, he knew that whatever the outcome, they would face it together. It wasn't easy. Some of the people involved were powerful, influential, and willing to fight dirty, but Michael and Eva's combined determination, their unwavering belief in each other, was more powerful than anything they encountered. In the end, they exposed the conspiracy, and justice was served. The people responsible were removed from the company, and the damage was contained. But the battle had changed Michael. It had reminded him that he didn't need to sacrifice his happiness, his family, or his integrity for the sake of success. As Michael looked around at the aftermath of the battle, he realized that the victory wasn't in the business or the money, it was in the way he had rediscovered himself, the way he had learned to trust, to love, and to lean on the people who mattered most. He had finally understood that his true wealth wasn't in his bank account, was in the love of his family, the trust of his friends, and the knowledge that he had overcome the darkness to find the light. As they celebrated their victory, Michael couldn't help but reflect on how far they had come. He had been a man who was lost, consumed by ambition, terrified of losing everything. But now he was a man who had everything he needed: love, trust, and a family that would always stand by him. He was no longer defined by the accolades of his career or the weight of the world on his shoulders. He was defined by the relationships he had nurtured, the lessons he had learned, and the love that had transformed his life. In the months that followed, Michael and Eva became even more involved in their community, using their success to help others who had been through similar struggles. They became advocates for resilience, for the power of love, and for the idea that true success was about lifting others up, not tearing them down. Their story became one of hope, one that they shared with anyone who would listen. A story of overcoming betrayal, of finding strength in love, and of discovering that no matter how dark the journey may seem, there is always a way forward, as long as you have the people you love by your side. And so, as they stood together, hand in hand, watching their daughter play in the yard, they knew that the greatest victory of all wasn't the business or the wealthy, it was the love they had built, the family they had created, and the future that awaited them, one they would walk into together, with open hearts and unwavering faith in each other.